leave Britain with an increase of more than £500 billion in national debt. Our business editor Robert Peston considers the prospects for the British economy living with such high debt levels.
When we reach the next decade, what kind of economy will we be living and working in? Well, the public sector should be relatively smaller if growth in public spending, excluding investment, is cut by a third to 1.2% a year in the way that the Chancellor announced today. That represents serious belt-tightening for employers of our teachers, nurses and civil servants. And there are forecast to be real cash cuts in public sector investment. So, fewer new roads, schools and hospitals. But even so, the national debt will balloon even on the Treasury's forecasts, which some say are too optimistic. Because of a collapse in tax revenues, especially those generated by our battered housing market and the smashed-up City of London, public borrowing is soaring to annual levels we've not seen in peacetime. Between now and 2014, this black hole in the public finances means national debt will soar by more than £500 billion, equal to more than a third of our entire current economic output, or £17,000 for each and every taxpayer. And as a share of GDP, public sector net debt will rise from 36% in March this year to 57% in 2014. And there are some who'd argue that the true level of the debt burden on the state and on taxpayers is much higher, because the government's figures don't include most of the money it's committed on behalf of us as taxpayers to bailing out our troubled banks. Who's going to pay for all of this? Well, for the first time since Margaret Thatcher swept to power almost 30 years ago, there's an explicit increase in the tax burden on higher earners, from a new top rate of income tax, changes to tax allowances, and increases in national insurance.
Increased tax on the rich is a redistribution. So we have got, for the first time, extra tax being paid by people firstly above 100,000, above 140,000, 150,000. So these are all people that Gordon Brown, I think, will feel, Mr Darling will feel, will pay this, and it won't be too painful for them.
The Tories claim that the cumulative impact of all tax increases will bite on those with incomes less than £40,000, though the Treasury disputes this. What isn't in dispute is that the big tax increases are deferred till 2011 and beyond. Robert Peston, BBC News.
And Robert is with me here, and our political editor Nick Robinson is at Westminster. Nick, I'll turn to you first. We've heard the word gamble used a lot today. How much of a gamble is it?
Oh, a huge one, Hugh, because in many ways Alistair Darling today tore up the rules as we knew them. Don't spell out the problems in detail, say the rules. Don't, for goodness sake, spell out the cost either. Don't increase taxes on the wealthy, because that will scare everybody else. And don't, whatever you do, try to spend your way out of a recession. All of those rules gone. The rules, effectively, of politics and economics for the past 30 years, since before Margaret Thatcher's day. Now, he may not look much like a gambler, he may not sound much like a gambler, but certainly Alistair Darling has taken a vast bet with the money of the country today. If he pulls it off, of course, not only will the economy turn round, but Labour will start to believe in that dream of a record fourth term. If not, the economy will really struggle. We will all pay much more for a long time to come. And of course, the Chancellor sending out the bills will not be a Labour Chancellor, but a Tory.
And Robert, in the studio here, how do you see the risks?
Well, a bit like Nick, it's been a really strange day. I mean, what do we have confirmed today? Tax revenues collapsing, the national debt rising by £500 billion. That's £17,000 for each and every taxpayer. At the same time, we've got the government saying that if it's re-elected in 2010 or so, it'll put up taxes quite significantly for those over 100,000 a year, and by a measurable amount for quite a lot earning less than that. And the stimulus measure, this cut in VAT, well, it might not work. People might not decide to increase their spending because there's been a small cut in what they're paying at the shops. Now, when you add all that together, you'd have expected, I think, markets to be a little bit alarmed by all of this. But actually, the stock market actually rose very strongly. Some of that was to do with what was going on in the States, but it didn't fall after the Chancellor made his statement. Similarly, the pound held steady. So you might think the Chancellor can breathe a sigh of relief. However, there's another market price, actually, which didn't go his way. You can insure all sorts of debt in the markets, including the debts of the UK. Now, the price of insuring British government debt went up. What does that mean? It means that the creditworthiness of the UK this evening isn't perceived to be what it was this morning. That is not the kind of thing that will please either the Chancellor or the Prime Minister.
Robert, thank you very much, Robert Peston, and Nick Robinson of Westminster, thank you too. Let's have a look at the day's other news now then.